Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Today we'll be doing an impressions video on the Analogue Pocket in 2025. We'll be starting with an unboxing, a screen comparison, and showcase some games, and just my overall thoughts on the device.
So, starting with the unboxing, I wasn't sure what to expect. The device came pretty quickly. I paid $5 extra for the expedited shipping. What I really liked was the conscious packing here. They used cardboard materials, no plastic, which I thought was pretty cool, especially considering all the environmental impacts of something like a packing peanut. It seems like we've come a long way. First impression, I just took out the dock and now I'm about to open up to view the Pocket itself, was that it felt very nice looking. It looked kind of like an Apple product. And again, I've never had one of these devices before. My reason for buying it was watching some videos of it doing emulation in addition to playing gameboy cartridges. So I was pretty excited to get this device. So now we're going to start with unboxing the Pocket itself. So you can see I have my cool tool to open box. It's a box cutter basically. It won't hurt you when you open something. And that's what I used to open this plastic. I had the name of the device on the back of it, the color, and then, again, a very tight, snug packaging. You kind of saw the air kind of get sucked out as you open it. Pretty neat. My first impressions of the device, it looks really cool. I really like the flat look, the sharp corners. I've always been a fan of, the sharp edge iPhones and the older models of the iPhone for those sharp edges. So this one really kind of hit home with me when I saw the videos of it doing emulation, and I was kind of excited to get it. It comes pretty bare bones, just the device itself and a USB-C charger. That seems to be pretty standard these days. I know companies say that this is more environmentally friendly, but we know they're just cutting costs by not including a power brick. So before I take off any of the, factory screen protectors, I want to turn it on and just check it out. And you can see you get a welcome screen here. It gives you a tutorial, which is pretty cool. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but the button layout is typical of what I would consider SNES controller layout, which is you have a D-pad, you have 4 face buttons, you have an L and R trigger, a start select button, and then you have this analog button in the middle between the start and select button. And that analog button is where the tutorial is walking you through all the various shortcuts available that are unique to this device. The buttons are what I would consider squishy. Maybe the triggers are kind of clicky, but overall, the button presses feel very squishy, kind of similar to a Super Nintendo. Anyway, for whatever reason, then it asks you to set the date and time, and that's what I'm doing here. I kind of skipped over the update instructions. There was a QR code to kind of go to the website to update it, and I'll walk through how to update the device. But it's pretty straightforward. You go to the website, you download a file, put it on an SD card, stick the SD card in the device, and then next time you boot up your Pocket, it automatically updates. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward, very self-explanatory. There is one step I missed there. You put the SD card in the Pocket first, and then the analog will kind of create these folders for you. And that's pretty important too for installing the various cores you'll need for emulation. So the first thing I wanted to do when I was starting to test the device is just check out various cartridges that I had laying around for Game Boy. I just wanted to see this thing in action. And the first cartridge I'm testing out here is a Pokemon Blue version. It's my original one when I was a kid. And this one kind of really is the first Game Boy game I think I ever got. And you can see it has kind of like this DMG filter. It's pretty cool. And I was pretty impressed with it. I don't know if I'd ever keep that filter, so I wasn't really a fan of that DMG style, maybe because I never played on a DMG. But if you hit the analog button, you could kind of go through various display options, which I'll show later, to kind of change to what a Game Boy Color would present when you put that cartridge in a Game Boy Color. So now I'm going to go ahead and test something else. Here I got a Metroid Game Boy Advance game. So first we tried out a Game Boy, regular Game Boy game. Now we're trying a Game Boy Advance game. And you can see a Game Boy Advance doesn't quite fill the screen. That's because the Game Boy Advance original resolution was a little more widescreen. But I mean, it looks really great on this device. It looks cool. It's hard to capture how great the screen is. I tried to get a closer view up on my camera, but I mean, the picture looks amazing. And I'll do some screen comparisons to some other Game Boys later in the video. But here I'm just testing it out, trying to see how it plays, and I mean, it feels really cool. I mean, this device is really good. The buttons feel great, very responsive, no issues playing the cartridge. And this is what most people probably bought their Pocket for originally, was playing your original library of games on a more modern screen, which this offers that. And there's plenty of reviews on what the capabilities are, so I won't beat it up too much, but basically it plays 10x resolution for original Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games, because if you do the pixel math, I don't know exactly how to do it, but it ends up with a 10x increase in pixel density from the original Game Boys. And here I was just testing out the sleep function. The sleep function was pretty cool. It seems to be only available for cartridge games, and I think maybe some cores when you get into emulation on this device. But anyway, I didn't really care for the sleep thing a whole lot. So now I'm testing out a EverDrive Game Boy Color cartridge. And I'm just testing out various things just to see how they work and just to kind of test the compatibility with these various things. And I was just testing, starting a Romhack game, just trying to see how that looks on this. What's cool about Game Boy Color games and Game Boy games in particular is it takes advantage of the full screen, which I don't know about you, but I seem to like it when the game fills out the full screen of the device. Maybe it's just my OCD or how I like playing games, and for whatever reason, the way it looks on this screen, it kind of takes you back. I don't know if I'm just used to playing on the original Game Boy Color, where I'm having the device really close to my face, but I mean, I kind of have to pull this thing back. I mean, the picture is so big. I'll do some comparisons to original Game Boy Color later, but I mean, it looks really cool. I mean, it really modernizes some of those older games, and it kind of keeps that nostalgic feel of the Game Boy kind of form factor, which is pretty neat. All right, now it's time to unbox the dock itself. And all the reviewers seem to really praise the dock as being kind of a key component to enjoying the Analogue Pocket. I heard Russ from Retro Game Core say numerous times in his videos how having the dock really kind of elevated his experience and overall impressions of the device and how cool it was to dock it. And, I'd have to agree 100%. And you'll see later when I'm playing this thing docked. And what I realize is it's kind of like the ultimate compact MiSTer device. And, if you don't know what a MiSTer is, it's a hardware level emulation. And because of the dual FPGA cores, I forgot how you even say that, but it's basically this device is able to do hardware level emulation similar to a MiSTer device. And a MiSTer device has a whole lot of, from what I can gather online and from the few times I've looked into it, a lot of complications in kind of setting it up and fine tuning. And this thing was really easy to set up. Once you set up the various cores for this device, you basically have a MiSTer device that's able to play all the amazing 2D retro games that you'd want to play on the hardware level, which is what people praise the MiSTer device for, but in this compact form factor that's you can use for traveling. Where I think this device really shines is in hardware emulation for older Super Nintendo ROM hacks. So those are for those hardcore Mario Kaizo players. I don't know if you guys even know what Kaizo Mario is. You should look it up if you haven't seen it before. It's basically these insanely difficult Super Mario World ROM hacks that require very precise hardware emulation, low input, kind of what you got on the original Super Nintendo. But the only way to get that on a Super Nintendo is to get one of these really expensive cartridge that play and emulate the hardware level cartridge effect that you'd get from playing with the low input and latency that you'd need to kind of play these super difficult Super Mario levels. But here you have a similar layout, not exactly a Super Nintendo controller, which I know a lot of people claim is needed to kind of get the same impact on those low input latency Kaizo Mario type games. A lot of people don't even play it with a grip style, but you get all the controls. You can play Super Nintendo on a hardware level emulation, get low input. I mean, this thing is just really amazing, especially for the fact that it's a compact handheld, take it as you go, put it in your pocket kind of device. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of people say that they're hesitant to put this thing in their bag or something. I mean, you have $1,000 phone in your pocket all the time. This thing's a couple $100. I don't know. In my mind, I don't think there needs to be a lot of care given to a device just because it feels premium. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing that it does feel premium, especially to all their alternatives. But to get what you get from this device, having hardware emulation on the go, I don't see why you wouldn't put it in your bag and take it with you on the go. I mean, that's the whole purpose of having a device like this, is having some portability and taking it with you to places that you wouldn't be able to normally game. And okay, so I just brushed over the update process. All I did here was put in the new SD card and record kind of like the update screen itself. And one thing I kind of brushed over is the overall UI of the device. I mean, it's for what you're paying for. The UI is pretty plain Jane, to put it simply. But it gets the job done. I mean, it's very straightforward. This is the home screen itself. You just got 6 menu options to choose from. Not that complicated. But I mean, when you think about the original Game Boy itself, there was no UI or menu or anything like that anyway. So I don't know that I would care a whole lot that this thing has a plain UI, as long as it does what we want it to do, which is play those cartridges, do FPGA, whatever hardware emulation, and get the job done. And now I'm going to be showcasing the various video settings that you have on a Game Boy cartridge. So what you do is you hit that analog button after you play the cartridge. And I'm just messing with the buttons themselves. If you press down, you get a little negative symbol showing you that the volume decreased. Here it kind of gives you some game detail. I was trying to figure out how to get to the settings. So you go to settings, you go to pocket, you go to display, it shows you the brightness. Then you go to system, and in there you can check the video settings. So within here you could change the color palette, so you kind of get some different color palettes, and that's what I was speaking to earlier, trying to get like the same feel that you would get if you play this on a Game Boy Color. And this one's all the Game Boy color palette itself. It doesn't get you the Game Boy Color feeling yet, but once you tweak with it a little bit, you could kind of get there. And you can see the blue one, I think, looks really cool. I think it's a perfect filter. It kind of gets you the same filter that you would have gotten if you played on a Game Boy Color itself. Now I'm just going to showcase some gameplay of Pokemon Blue. Tweaking around the settings again, and you'll see some gameplay, me fighting a Pidgey, and just kind of a general experience overview of playing a Game Boy Color game. So now going over how to update the dock. The easiest part of the entire Pocket experience. How do you update it? Once you update your Analogue Pocket, you put the Pocket on the dock and it updates the dock. It's that easy. And it'll just kind of wait for you to load, and then that's it. You're in the game. So now doing some quick device comparisons, because I feel like a lot of people are saying, okay, is this thing really worth $230 or 300 plus bucks on an eBay reseller scalper price? I mean, that's totally up to you. If you just want to play Game Boy games, I would just get the funny playing Game Boy Color, the FPGBC, which is what I have there on the left. Now I'm going to be doing a quick screen comparison to some other options. I mean, if you already have a Game Boy Advance or you have a Game Boy DMG and you already did like a IPS upgrade, because those things are all over AliExpress. If you just have Game Boy games, would you play this? I don't think so. And you can see I just did a quick size comparison to Game Boy Color and the DMG. I mean, and just look how much bigger it is. I mean, it's way bigger when you compare the two side by side. And, what I was surprised to see is like the width of the Pocket is pretty close to the width of the Game Boy Advance. And even the height is equal to the width. I guess that makes sense, because if the width is equal, then the height would be equal too. So I kind of feel like maybe Game Boy Advance experience would be similar on a Game Boy Advance. I mean, I don't know. If the width is the same width, I'd imagine the height would have to be the same on the Pocket to kind of match the same resolution. Anyway, here I'm doing a side-by-side to the funny playing Game Boy Color, which, again, I would recommend over this if all you're doing is playing Game Boy games. And this thing is half the price, has the cool Game Boy Color form factor, looks great. The screen is not that much bigger. It feels bigger, though, for some reason when you're playing. Maybe it's just a higher pixel density. I don't know. But, yeah, I'm trying to go in to see the side-by-side of a similar game. But you can kind of see how much bigger the character looks on the right on the Pocket. I mean, it is noticeably bigger. And maybe that much little extra, screen size is going to give you that much bigger feeling. Anyway, I don't know. But, totally up to you on if you think that's worth it considering the other options. So let's say you don't have a Game Boy Color and you have one of these Ambernick emulators. Would you get an Analogue Pocket? And here I'm doing a showcase side-by-side to, so it's not an Ambernick one, but a Miu Mini Plus. So this is the Plus version. And I'm just kind of doing a side-by-side comparison to what Super Mario would look like. And I mean, honestly, the Miu Mini is pretty nice. I mean, it has a bezel-less screen. The screen takes up almost the entire device. Would I get this? I don't know. I mean, if I didn't care about hardware level emulation, probably not. And here I'm comparing to a 3DS XL, which I love, just to kind of see like a different screen comparison. And you can see the 3DS looks pretty great. I mean, a lot of people say the 3DS needs to be updated and have its own modern screen, but I mean, it is the most modern device before the Switch. So all things considering, it's pretty easy to get some legal ROMs on there, or, and I just don't see why you would get that if you already get an Analogue Pocket rather, if you already had something like that. I mean, I really think the Miu Mini looks pretty good. I mean, the one thing that kind of turned me off with the Pocket is, look how big the bezel is. The bezel is huge. And that Miu Mini is just way more pocketable, has no bezel, nice form factor. Then you have the 3DS XL, plays a bunch of 3DS games, very pocketable, clamshell, which a lot of people love. But I mean, I don't know. I think the Miu Mini wins here for portability. I mean, if the purpose of the device is to be portable and the fact that you can take it around, I think it wins. But if your goal is to do hardware level emulation and play ROM hacks that require low input and the FPGA latency, then maybe to get the Pocket. So I felt like I had to go back and just show the update process itself. So again, super straightforward. You take the SD card, go to the website, I'll link it in the description. You pop it in there and it updates it. And here I went in and actually updated to also include the cores, which is a different link. And I popped in some Super Nintendo ROM hacks because I feel like that was the coolest part of this device now, which is the ability to play hardware level emulation, Super Nintendo ROM hacks on the Game Boy form factor. I know a lot of hardcore people will probably say, well, you kind of need the Super Nintendo controller form factor to get the real feeling, but I don't know. I think it's cool. The fact that it's portable, you don't have to sit at home and play on your computer, kind of takes away the need to have all the right, stars aligned to play some crazy Kaizo Mario hack. So here I'm playing, the baby Mario Kaizo because I'm not that good at it. And I'm just going through the various core settings for the screen scaling. And I take this pretty seriously because I do like to fit the full screen, but not at the cost of the character stretching or looking the weird wrong direction. And here you can see it kind of stretches off the screen with the settings I currently have. Anyway, I'm just kind of messing around a little bit and seeing what the various things are. And, some of these things I don't even know what they do. The filter I like the most is that CRT Trinitron filter. I mean, this thing looks so cool. You don't really capture how cool it looks on the camera, but it kind of has like these scan lines and normally I don't really like these emulation level filters on a device. I just think they look kind of lame, but I thought they looked pretty cool on the Pocket, and I actually kept it as my default display filter when I'm playing Super Nintendo games. So now I'll be showcasing some gameplay of various games. So now you're probably asking, after all the various comments I had, positive, negative, would I recommend this device? I think it depends on what current devices you already have. If you have a Super Nintendo, if you have an SD to NES thing to get the perfect low input lag Romhack emulation on a Super Nintendo device and you already play at home mostly, then no, I probably wouldn't get this. If you have a bunch of Ambernic Miu Mini clones or some other emulation devices, not super into low input, gameplay where you need that responsiveness to get hardware emulation, no, I probably wouldn't get this device. Do you want to play your original library of Game Boy games and you don't have an updated Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance with a backlit screen? Then yes, I mean, this is a modern take on that. Gives you 10x resolution, plays your original cartridges, has the portability of the original Game Boy, has the same form factor. All in all, really cool. Do you not have any of those things and you want to get into Super Nintendo gameplay? The cool thing about this thing is you can pop this thing into a dock and get kind of like a Nintendo Switch experience. And I don't know that I touched on this, and I know this is touched on in other videos, but you can kind of wake the dock with a controller that's already hooked up to it and get that same Nintendo Switch experience where you're playing a game portably on the go. You want to take it with you. You just take the device out of the dock and take it with you. And you have a great screen that really kind of showcases the games with these really neat filters that were hard to capture on video. And there's no way to really kind of display that to somebody that doesn't have one of these. So if you have a friend that has one, I would let you borrow it and check it out before spending the money on it. But, if you have any of these other devices already, if you have the Miu Mini Plus, which I think is a pretty cool bezel-less, more pocketable than this thing, then I would probably save your money. But if you were thinking about getting a MiSTer device to play 2D emulation and you want the option to play on the go, I'd probably get the Analogue Pocket. I know that's a long way of saying it depends, but I really do think it depends. It's not a cheap device. If you don't have a lot of disposable income, this is a big investment. And I would save your hard-earned money on something else if you already have any of the things I discussed before. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or anything. I'm happy to help you decide if you need something like that, depending on what you have. Happy to answer questions, and thanks for watching.